Ahead of kickoff. Yolulwe, we mentioned the missing box in the Bulls camp in the last hour, but this time around the Sharks also are affected. Kolisi, Qoshe, and of course, Eben, Etzebeth.
Yeah, 100%, Khozo. I think on both sides there are those casualties that are important to both teams in terms of if you want to see them playing at optimal level. You mentioned two players there who are leaders to this Sharks team. Kolisi, who's captained them to a successful earlier part of this season. He is not a part of this particular team because he's on a Springbok leave. When you look at the other side, Eben Etzebeth on his side, in fact, he's been injured for quite some time. Hasn't really played for the Sharks this season. So that is going to be a big blow for them because of the way that he goes about his stuff as an enforcer, of course, as we know, in that lock position, a person that is very physical and can give them the upper hand when it comes against a team like the Bulls, who pride themselves in being very physical up front themselves. And you look at a guy like Sia, he covers ground and is also a leader and offers an array of skills that you would associate with both a player that plays in the forwards and even some backline qualities himself. But Qoshe as well, his scrumming prowess has grown in leaps and bounds over the last couple of years. As a World Cup winner himself, one of the best props in his position right now, so to not have him in the team is a big blow. But when you look at the players that have come in fact, you look at their front row, it's still an all Springbok front row. When you look at Mtutu Komkunu, there's Bongi Mbonambi, who's a two-time World Cup winner, and then you also have Trevor Nyakane as well, another two-time World Cup winner. So they still have what it takes to mount a big challenge here at Loftus Festival Stadium. And then you look at a guy like Jason Jenkins, he'll be coming in the lock positions, a player that played at the Bulls a couple of years ago, was part of the last team that went out in the Super Rugby quarterfinals all the way back in 2019 before he had his two stints away out in Ireland. So he is a person that will be chomping at the bit coming back to his former stomping ground. So we'll have to wait to see how they fare against a team like the Bulls, who will also want to give them a physical battle up front in the forwards department, of course.
But it isn't all doom and gloom for the Sharks. I mean, they are heavily laden with Springboks, and talking about leaders that are out, there are still leaders on that pitch that can do the business for the Bulls. Bongi Mbonambi and Lukanyo not too bad.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, look, if you mention those two players, two back-to-back World Cup winners, players who are big when it comes to the dressing room at the Sharks, they will know what it takes to come out to the Bulls and try to get a victory. Bongi Mbonambi, he played for the Bulls. This is where his development came from. He's also a guy that was at a school right here around the corner, St. Albans, so he knows what it's like to play games at altitude and what is needed at this particular level. Not to mention what it does for the Springboks at an international level. Lukanyo is also a player with a calm head on his shoulders, which will be pivotal for the young players that we have around him, particularly next to him. A player like Lorenzo Julie is an exciting young prospect who will be looking at a player like to give him guidance in a very, very testing atmosphere, which will be Loftus Festival Stadium, besides just the altitude factor, but the opposition that will be on the other side of the game. A guy like Lukanyo he'll be the one telling the guys how to pace themselves to make sure that in the 70th minute they still have enough in their tank to mount a challenge when it does get tough on the legs. And look at some of the other young players like Ethan Hooker. Is a player that's made headlines over the last couple of months. He's even in the box 56-man alignment squad. So he's a guy that will look at this stage and try to make a name for himself. Jordan Hendricks are playing at 15 this time around, not even at 10. But he's a player that will know what it's like to come out to these type of grounds, and put in a good performance befitting of the Sharks jersey. And like I said, there's that 56-man alignment squad that's just been announced by Rusty Russman. A lot of these players will be looking to show themselves and, get a bit of a hands up on the other guys that are competing with them before the international season. No bigger stage than this one here at Loftus Festival Stadium, with these two proud unions going, hammer and tongs, trying to make sure that there's a great spectacle for the rugby supporters that will be coming out here.
Yolulwe, having a quick glance at the statistics, the Sharks haven't won in Pretoria since 2022. What do they need to do to break or snap this losing streak at altitude?
I think, like I said earlier, also they need to pace themselves, because that altitude factor, it does come into play for sure. you will need to know when is the right time for you to take those small little breaks on the field. That's where you need your leaders. That's where you need the Bongi Mbonambis, the Lukhanyo Arms, the players around the field, the Vincent Chituka, who's the captain out there today, to be the ones that tell them, listen, guys, now this is where we slow the game down. This is where we control the tempo to make sure that we're going to be alive when it's going to matter the most at the latter stages of the tournament, of the game, my apologies. But they also have enough quality also to make sure that when they get to those stages that they do have the lead. You know, it's going to be a conversation of the coach and the players, whether they want to start fast and try to consolidate as they go ahead, or they'll try to pace themselves and back themselves in the back end, where they'll be trying to then chase the game and get a second win and then win it in a comeback or come from behind type of fashion. But they do have the right type of players to do so. The players who have been at the biggest stage of world rugby, that have played at the biggest pressures. So this for them will be a smaller test compared to what they faced on the world stage. But most importantly, also, they have to play their own brand of rugby. You can't come to this type of ground with all the challenges that come with the altitude, with the opposition, and then still trying to figure yourselves out on the day. You will need to have a strong game plan. Your leaders will have to make sure that that game plan is enforced throughout the game, and then they don't allow the game to get too loose. Because we know the Bulls, they will go with their forwards pack, but they also know that when it comes to their backline play, they've got enough weapons in their arsenal to hurt the Sharks team. The Sharks, they'll look at their backline weapons and say, we can also play that type of rugby. It's about who unleashes those backline players to the best ability, and when they do so, that could be the pivotal point of how either one of these teams gets to win the game out here at Loftus Festival Stadium.
Yolulwe, we do know that rain is predicted for this encounter. It looks pretty dry where you are, so it doesn't look like there's any rain. But if it does rain, does it give any of the two sides some sort of an advantage?
Also, there are a few rain droplets here and there. I'm getting a few of those myself. We're just braving it out to make good TV, of course. But if it is, of course, the situation, I'm sure the field is already wet. There's been rain. I'm thinking from last night as well. There was probably rain in the morning as well. So there is already a wet surface. I think then it will suit, to be honest, the Bulls because of how they like to use their forward pack. They like to keep the ball within their forwards and keep the game tight, and then only then spread it out to their backline players when the opportunities do avail themselves for them to strike a little bit closer to the opposition's try line. So maybe a guy like Jake White will be looking at the conditions, licking his lips, saying, it's wet conditions that favor my forwards, it's altitude. They don't have certain players that could do well in these conditions, which are the Sharks, the likes of the Kolisi, Oxen Chairs, and Eben Etzebeth. So maybe the rugby gods might be smiling through these gloomy conditions in the sky, smiling in the favor of the Bulls. And then you look at their record against the Sharks as well, and then they'll probably be licking at their lips at this particular situation. But then we've seen teams come out and try to defy the odds. I look at the Currie Cup final, for example, where the Sharks came out all guns blazing in a display of running rugby to beat the Lions in wet conditions. So you never know. Also, teams are always innovating and finding ways to play their running style of rugby if that's what their brand is all about, even in the most wet conditions. But also, I think both sides will be well adept also because of where this competition is placed. It's a European competition. These teams have been playing in wet conditions on different sides of Europe, whether it is in France, whether it's in England, whether it's in Ireland. So I don't think wet conditions even phase these teams anymore. So that is what you're expecting to see from them. Two teams that are able to play in either type of conditions, and that's what the fans will be expecting. They don't want conditions to be an excuse for them not seeing a proper brand of South African rugby. So it's still going to be even match, but if I have to go on one side, I'd say the home side.
Well, Yolulwe Qoshe giving us the latest from that build-up, the all-important clash between the Bulls versus the Sharks at Loftus Versfeld. Well, that's where we leave it from the sports desk. Thabo Mdluli with more news and headlines right after this. Do stay with us.